Hello, welcome to the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. I am your host, Roy Kessel, and today we are very excited to have with us special guest Scott Pederson. Scott is the founder and CEO of Positive Athlete, and they're doing some incredible work to change the world and really amazing things that they're doing around the country. So, Scott, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Roy. Looking forward to this for a week when you and I talked about having me on, and always fun talking to you about a variety of things.
Before we dive into everything that Positive Athlete is about, I want to take you back to when Scott was a young boy. What's your first memory of sports? What got you excited and engaged with sports?
Yeah, I grew up in the middle of Nebraska, the middle of nowhere, I think was the name of my hometown, and a small town in North Platte, Nebraska. And I had just hoped in my life. I love sports. You always grow up in Nebraska loving Nebraska football back then. I think they still love it now, but not as much as they did when I was growing up. And then, but my first love was baseball. My whole goal in life was to say, how can I don't care what I do. I just want to live in a town where there's a Major League Baseball team. That's my goal in life. I don't care what I'm doing. I can be a custodian, I could be a banker, I could be whatever, but what I want to do is I want to live in a town where there's a baseball team. So I went to the University of Nebraska, found quickly that my brother had already gotten involved with the football program. He was actually Tom Osborne's recruiting coordinator at Nebraska. And that was the job I wanted. And so I put a contract out on him. But my mom put a stop to that, so I couldn't have that job. And I was playing baseball at the time, just walking on, doing nothing, and not playing. But I asked if I could be the sports information person to travel around with the team, so I could get some experience, meet some people. And it was the best decision I ever made, was to stop playing and doing something like that, because when Nebraska played anywhere in the country, I got to meet the athletic directors and officials and people like that in all these different universities. So when I got out of school, I had a ready-made job, several opportunities to go places, and I chose to go to Oklahoma State. And I really went there for more sports information and promotion. But when I got there, the head coach was Jimmy Johnson. And Jimmy came to me at a golf tournament. I was about 2 weeks in, and he said, "Hey, I hear your brother's Tom Osborne's recruiting coordinator." And I said, "Yeah, he is." He goes, "Okay, well, you're mine now." So I think he just really wanted me to go to Thanksgiving dinner and figure out who Nebraska was recruiting, and see what intel I could get. So did that for a while, and then when Jimmy and the rest of the crew went down to the University of Miami to do the U, I had an opportunity to go to the Kansas City Royals and become the assistant director of marketing for the Royals. And so my boss at the time was Rush Limbaugh, of all people. And so for a year, one of my two truths and a lie I always throw out is I went to lunch with Rush Limbaugh 40 times one year. People are like, "Well, what do you mean, sat by your radio?" No, I actually went to lunch with Rush Limbaugh, had to go to lunch with Rush Limbaugh, because I was his assistant director of marketing, and no one else wanted to go to lunch with him and talk politics. And I didn't really want to talk politics with him either, but I thought it was a good career decision not to anger my boss. So Rush was let go by the Royals for standing around the water cooler and talking all the time. And at 24 years old, I got elevated to the position of director of marketing for the Kansas City Royals. And it was my first marketing idea for the Royals to win the 1985 World Series, which you can see if you're watching this, you'll see my Royal stuff in the background. But it was, so I want to take you back, Roy, to that kid in Nebraska growing up who just wanted to live in a town where there was a Major League Baseball team. And all of a sudden I'm in the locker room getting champagne poured on my head. I've got a car, and during the victory parade, we've gone through Kansas City, and you think your life just can't get any better than that.
Yeah, it's amazing, that power of sports, and you had that dream, and you took a lot of proactive steps. I think one of the things we often hear from people is how do I break into the sports world in some capacity. And a lot of times you just have to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy and put yourself in the world somehow. May not be your dream position to start, may not be where you thought you were going to start, but as you noted, once you got there, right, you got an opportunity with Jimmy Johnson because you had put yourself into another role at the university.
Yeah, and I think that's, if I always give, when I speak to college students and I talk to anybody who wants career advice, I always say, there's nothing like being connected. And, all of the things, every place I went from the Royals on was tied to the connectivity I created with people that along the way, like at the time, nobody knew who Rush Limbaugh was when I was at the Kansas City Royals. They just knew he was a guy who was a director of marketing. And, and at the time, really, not a lot of people knew who Jimmy Johnson was because he was just a football coach at Oklahoma State. That wasn't, nobody had heard too many things about him until he went there. And I kept connected to all of those people, and I always treated people well. I always saw the value of anybody that you meet. You just never know who you're meeting. And that's kind of followed me in my life. When after I left the Royals, I went to work for Miller Brewing Company and did their sports marketing for the Southeast and some of the East Coast. And then got to know folks with the NFL, and the NFL said, why don't you start your own company? We want to do some fun stuff and create some properties. And so the NFL started filling me up, started my own company and started building out programs like punt, pass, and kick for the NFL. Did a lot of different things, was on the early stages of what the NFL does now around the NFL experience. First time they ever did one of those. So I got a chance to do a lot of those fun things, and the company just grew. Major League Baseball started hiring me to do things. We got opportunities with the Goodwill games, and it was a lot of fun. Got into athlete representation for a while. And then probably the one that drives what I do today was Livestrong. And that was a program that Nike was struggling with when it came out, because quite frankly, nobody knew who Lance Armstrong was because there weren't a lot of people following cycling. And so our company made the recommendation that, hey, let's don't make this about Lance. Let's make this about people who have survived cancer, who haven't survived cancer, with this yellow wristband, because it just wasn't connecting with people. But you could connect with people when they have a cause like that, because everybody in their life has somebody that's been impacted by cancer. And the lessons it taught me was how many of the athletes wanted that kind of a thing, wanted to see, they were tired of athletes being portrayed in the news for the wrong reasons. And back then it was Michael Vick and dogfighting and those kinds of things that the news was just all too happy to report, because it bleeds, it reads. And so I set out to try to do something that was positive and tied to sports.
You touched on so many important points there, which is you take the Livestrong concept and you talk about the need to grow that brand, and it really did, right? Lance became the face, obviously, of that brand, for better or for worse, with some of the things that he went through. But before that, right, it really grew to an amazing scale, and really with those wristbands was the first time I think that people had seen that as a mechanism to identify with a particular cause. That was one of the first ones that sort of truly went viral.
Yeah, it very much was. And, there was no internet at the time, that happened. It happened. The viralness was athletes started wearing the wristband. We just said, hey, put this on and we'll take a picture of you and with it on. And then they started wearing it during their games and during the Olympics. And all of a sudden, now Oprah wants you on the first time, wants Lance on her show and says, I want everybody to buy one of these things. And so something viral like that happens when it's authentic and when it touches people. And, that's what I love about Major League Baseball's Stand Up for Cancer program, is that, when people hold those signs up, it really means something. It makes it stop. I know we're here at a World Series game, but when I stop and I put that sign up and I write someone's name on that's how people felt about the yellow wristband, that they were wearing this. I'm wearing this in honor of my mom. I'm wearing this in honor of a close friend that passed away from cancer.
And you touch on such an important point, which is athletes and sports organizations have this platform that they can use, right? They get great attention, and their highest and best use is really to rally resources and rally support for these different causes. The athletes don't have to necessarily be the ones that come up with the concept or the execution and marketing of that, but really you've got that stage where people will listen and identify with it. And again, as you said, Stand Up to Cancer, right? And they flash around the stadium several times during a game, and you see all of these signs. And as you said, almost everybody has the experience of someone in their family or their close circle that has been impacted by cancer. So, it's really a huge opportunity to draw resources towards those causes.
Yeah, and I think that's, Roy, what your organization's all about in terms of highlighting and helping organizations understand the value of that authenticity and what they're doing. You watch when the World Series comes this year and they do that again. Look at the faces of the people holding. There a lot of times they got tears in their eyes. They're very serious. They're,
Right.
It's really, like I said, it's one of the best things I've seen out there since the Livestrong thing, happened.
So take us through now. You've had all of these opportunities. You've been involved with some high level university causes, professional sports franchises. You talked about the Royals and amazing opportunity to be there for the World Series, work with the NFL, work with the Stand Up to Cancer model and Livestrong. And when was the first time that you had this notion of creating Positive Athlete?
It came down to some conversations I had with athletes, and it came down to this idea. The athletes were a little bit frustrated by the idea that they were being lumped into a category of athletes are bad people. Athletes don't make any good decisions. And it's like, that's not true. There's so many good professional athletes doing good things. There's some knuckleheads who do things that really take away from all of that. But the fact of the matter is most of them are really good people. And I had this idea in the back of my head because I had worked on it a long time before when I was with the Miller Brewing Company. They had the Man of the Year program, and they were the sponsor. And it was actually started out as the Lineman of the Year, and then they changed it to the Man of the Year. And I had this thought in my head. Actually, it kind of went back to my son. I was sitting at one of his awards banquets, those painful awards banquets where you're sitting with your son and he's a really good athlete, but not an elite athlete. And 5% of the kids who are, at the banquet are getting awards because they're all state, all conference, all of these things. And here's my son, who's a really, really good kid, who's done a lot for his school, had overcome an MCL injury and can you continue to play? And it's like, there's no awards for him tonight. He's not getting an award tonight. And I looked out around and there were all sorts of these other kids that were not getting awards either, but I knew the kids and they were really, really good kids. And I was like, where are the awards for those kids for being the kind of people that you want to be, in your workforce someday, that you want to be associated with? And so I called Hines Ward and said, hey, I have this idea that I want to run past you and to see if you would be the face of it. And started out, he was still playing at the time. He had just won Super Bowl MVP. He had won Dancing with the Stars, so all the women would know who he was. And the whole idea was to start it up in Pittsburgh. And I said, what I want to do is I want to find the most positive high school athletes in Western Pennsylvania, boys and girls sports, all sports, 9th through 12th grade, and make it free for people to just nominate a kid and tell us about it. No application, no anything. Just an easy thing that they can say, hey, I want to tell you about this kid. If I had 10 of these, we'd never lose a game. They sit on the bench. So the first one to high five somebody that makes a great play and, or their kids. And then, so we threw this out there to all the schools in Pittsburgh. And of course, it didn't hurt to have Heinz's name on it, and the carrot being that if you get chosen the most positive athlete in your sport, you get to come to downtown Pittsburgh, and Heinz will give you an award. And so, but what took me back, Roy, was the kinds of stories we started hearing from these people who would, like you would, if you didn't ask the question, you would never hear these stories of kids who started their own foundations for people and had raised ridiculous amounts of money. Kids who, the kid that was born with one arm, and he led his team in touchdown receptions, and we started hearing, and they didn't have to be that big of stories, but we just heard a lot about this human spirit of people who would an adult would give them a nomination, a coach would give them a nomination, said, this kid is just, they don't have an amazing story, they're just a really good kid, and I want to tell you about them. It was it was very freeing. It was like a love letter to a bunch of kids that that they had coached, and said, this kid's not going to play at the next level. And but what I want to say is how much I appreciate who they are, how they were for the team. So that program blew up in Pittsburgh, and we started getting tons and tons of nominations in, and the awards shows, we'd invite companies to come, say, hey, you want to stand next to Heinz Ward and giving away an award for positivity? And I had no shortage of people who wanted to do that. and it just grew from there, Roy, and grew, as we'll talk, into something that's now national.
Well, getting anything off the ground is a major accomplishment. So first of all, congratulations on getting it off the ground. And secondly, having a vision that is scalable, taking something that is not tightly wedded to, let's say, Pittsburgh or any other particular city, but something that you can really look at and build and grow. So I know you've really expanded a lot. Take us through a little bit of the progression of what you've been able to do and how you're going about that expansion.
Yeah, well, you have to understand that when we first started asking people to give us nominations, all I had was a fax machine. There was no internet. There was no way to automate this into something that would be easy to work with. And so my fax machine was just buzzing off with all of these nominations of kids. And so once we were able to kind of get automated, it helped us a bunch. I live in the Atlanta area, and actually Heinz does too. He went to UGA and was a star there, so I told him quickly. I said, "Hey, we need to do this where I'm on the ground and I can make things happen a little bit easier." So we grew Georgia, and just to give you an idea, last year here in Georgia, we had 455 high schools give us over 6,000 nominations of kids, and which is just mind blowing because there are no other programs like that are doing something like that, to have that many impact that many kids. So we had always known we could replicate it. We showed we could replicate it in both Pittsburgh and Atlanta. Delta Airlines had actually gotten behind us, and we did the program in New York and some of their hubs, New York, Detroit, Minneapolis. And so we were showing we could do this on a national basis. And then I got introduced to Champ Bailey, the great Champ Bailey, former Denver Bronco. We played for the Redskins at the time. They were the Redskins. And Champ introduced me to a gentleman who absolutely loved what we were doing. So what do you need? What do you need to make this national? You're showing me that you can replicate it. And last January, we were funded to open up 7 new markets. And we got nominations from all 50 states. And we're in 16% of the high schools in America in 5 months. And that shows you the strength of what the program is, because it hits this chord with people to say, you know what, I know that 3% of my athletes are going to go up to play at the next level. 97% of them aren't. And so I want to do something for that. I want to do something for 100% of the kids. But I also want to do something for those kids and to give them kind of a boost, give them some love in terms of, I see you, I see what you're doing out there. So we expanded like that. We have you and I first met at the ACES conference, the CEOs of national governing bodies. We've had several Olympic national governing bodies now come on board, like USA Swimming and USA Wrestling, USA Cheer. We're talking to USA Basketball right now, and it just continues to grow because people want to see. Here's the goal, Roy, is there are 10 million kids playing high school sports in America. All right, and that's 57% of the kids who play that are in high school. And what coaches and administrators and teachers and counselors will tell you, the most influential kids in the high school are the athletes, right or wrong, good or bad, right? Sometimes it's a good thing they're influential, and sometimes it's a bad thing that they're influential. And so, but our whole idea was, what if we could get as many of these 10 million kids to understand the value that playing sports gives you, just, by the soft skills you learn, being coachable, being accountable, being strategic, winning and losing, and all of those things, but then supply some character opportunities for them to teach them some character, and then say, hey, your next team is likely to be a company. And so how do we start preparing kids who, a lot of them have never thought, they're riding on this dream, I'm going to play professional sports, until the world tells them that they're not, but at the same time, okay, how about a dual purpose to say, chase the dream, but also understand that there are all these companies who would love to have a positive kid who is a leader and teamwork oriented for their company someday.
Yeah, and you talked about the influential nature, right, of being involved in sports. By definition, if you're going to be an athlete, right, you've got to be able to take that self-direction, that guidance, that coaching, and be willing to work with other people, right? There are some individual sports, but even within those sports, you may be taking the direction in a sense from yourself. And you've got to be able to have that mental toughness, have that discipline, have that work ethic, that are all things that are going to serve you well. The data is very clear in terms of the success rates of students that play sports, in terms of higher GPA, higher academic accomplishments, greater success in their work, in their professional lives as well. So you've done an incredible job building this now, scaling this. I know we've had a lot of conversations about where you see this going. So look ahead now, from the time we're sitting here, and take us through the next 18 to 24 months and tell us what you see on the horizon.
Well, we have a 5-year plan to where we're in 16% of the schools in the country right now. We want to be in 80% of the schools in the next 5 years. We think we're actually going to beat that. We want to have 500,000 kids nominated each year, somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million. We've already given over $600,000 in corporately sponsored scholarships to kids. And so we want to be giving over $1 million a year away in scholarships. Not that that's the be all end all, because if you have 500,000 kids, you can't give every single one of them a scholarship. But what we want to be able to do is have kids look at, we created an app for them that serves as two things. It is a LinkedIn type app, and it's a character building app. And so when the kid gets nominated now, that kid has a chance to populate that app that Workforce is going to start looking at. And Workforce is going to say, hey, wow, why? I want to hire these. You've got the pipeline, a workforce pipeline that we're very, very interested in. We want the kids to understand the value of some of these companies that they've maybe never considered even working for someday. We met with Aflac, and Aflac says the only thing a kid knows about Aflac is Nick Saban, Deion Sanders, and a duck. All right. They don't understand, and they don't. First of all, they don't understand what insurance is. They certainly don't understand what supplemental insurance is, and they also don't understand that a company like Aflac has cybersecurity jobs and accounting jobs and all these different kinds of things. So what we're trying to do in this next 5 years is really educate kids and take their careers seriously, take their sports seriously, but take their careers seriously and start expanding their minds a little bit about what they could possibly do. And we're trying to get companies to come in and say, and understand, the value of hiring an athlete. I mean, that they already come, I think it was Ed Bastian at Delta who said, I can train them what to do. What I can't train them to do is have good character. And part of the app, the character part of the app is we have 300 modules, 2-minute modules, which because a kid isn't going to watch anything more than 2 minutes now these days anyway. But it's LeBron James talking about courage. It's Nick Saban talking about accountability. It's all these different athletes, well-known athletes that the kids love, talking about core character traits. And so inside their app, every time they watch one of these videos, their character wheel goes up. And so now if you're a company, or even if you're a college coach coming in to look at one of these kids, they're saying, wow, look how much time this kid spent on their character. And, oh, wow, look what the kid would like to maybe do someday. This kid maybe wants to be an architect. Oh, we have a great architecture school here. Or I'm an architect. I'm an architectural company, and I want to hire these kids. So our goal, Roy, in the next 5 years is to really build out something to where we're really serving and helping these kids take that next level. So if you change culture in the high schools, what you're doing is you're changing it in the workforce as well. And you're changing it in the homes, because if you graduate good people, they're going to be good moms and dads. They're going to be good workers, and they're going to be the kind of people. And that's how you change society.
Well, and those traits, as you said, those soft skills are so hard to build and develop, and they're very hard to track. So creating an app that allows, you said it well. You said in the business world or in an insurance company, there's so many different aspects and job opportunities. And it's the same thing in the sports world, right? Same thing in philanthropy. You can really be any career that you want to have and work in the sports industry, right? And you can everything from medicine to architecture to operations to finance, right, and law and marketing and everything in between that don't require you to be an elite athlete, so to speak. But if we can build better people and create those opportunities for individuals to grow that skill set, that's an amazing opportunity for the kids. So congratulations for building and scaling that. We appreciate you taking the time to share that insight with us today.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's always fun to talk about it, and it continues to every day is a new fun opportunity. We're talking to so many people who what's funny is that the whole sports world seems to want to get behind us on this. We've had professional sports teams that are behind us and doing programs. We did some with the Commanders this year, the Tigers this year. All teams on a high right now. The Tigers had the best record in baseball for a long time, yet they gave every kid who got nominated for Positive Athlete 2 free tickets. And so we're finding different ways that different professional sports teams and Olympic governing bodies can work with us. So it's not all just about working with the high schools. It's about working the entire sports industry to really change the culture and change the mindset of people about sports.
Well, Scott, we want to change directions just for a minute here at the end, just for a little bit of fun. Very impressive work with Positive Athlete. And I know that if we used our superpowers and wave our magic wand to make you commissioner of a sport, you'll be able to use those skills for good there as well. So tell us what sport you would select.
Well, I would say it would be a tough call for me because Major League Baseball would probably be the commissioner job I would probably most want. But I have some things I'd like to see happen in the NFL that I'd like to be commissioner. Plus that guy, because Rogers making $32 million a year. So that would actually be good. And I could think of how fast we could move Positive Athlete along if I was making $32 million a year. So I'm going to go with football. Okay. And here's the reason why. I have a rule that I want to get changed. All right. I feel like I see these guys doing these personal fouls on a guy. And it takes a really good player out of a game. And really all that happens to that player who committed the personal foul is it's a 15-yard penalty, but you may have just knocked out the best player, you may have knocked out Patrick Mahomes from a game. And so is a 15-yard penalty the same thing as knocking Patrick Mahomes out of a game? I feel like so my rule would be, if you knock somebody out of a game and they're on the IL or the IR or anything like that, you have to sit out as long as they do. That may curb some of the guys taking pot shots. Now the team may say, well, go ahead and hit Patrick Mahomes. But I would, at the same time, I would like to see that rule in particular. It always drives me nuts when I see that happen.
And you're talking about that only being applicable on a personal foul situation, not just on a regular hit.
Yeah, on a personal foul. Is it, the obvious things, and you can tell when somebody's careless and really trying to, a guy's going out of bounds, clearly out of bounds, and the guy just knocks him into the bleachers and he gets a 15-yard penalty, but the quarterback's out for the game. And it's like, that just doesn't seem like a very fair fit.
Yeah, it's hard because that intent and that resulting injury that may or may not happen, right? So it's always hard. I hate to see these athletes get hurt at any point, but obviously when it's a cheap shot or a personal foul, that's obviously a lot worse. So I think that would be an interesting rule, and we'll see if we can call Roger and put that in front of him and see if we can get some movement there.
Yeah, I've got other things to ask Roger, but I think if I had a chance to talk to him, that would be one of them. You got any rules you want to change? And it's like, I might just have one.
Oh, there you go. So, Scott, thank you for being with us. We really appreciate your time today. And for all of our viewers and listeners, we appreciate you taking time to join us on the Sports Philanthropy podcast. This is your host, Roy Kessel, signing off. Please remember to live generously. Thank you, everybody.